Follow the 4Corners Podcast on social media. Like us on Facebook, 4Corners Podcast. Follow us on Twitter, Podcast 4Corners. And check us out on Instagram, 4Corners Podcast. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes and Stitcher. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review.
I want to take this time to apologize to the television audience for what they're about to see.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 4 Corners Podcast. I'm Shad, here with Matt and Brad. Guys, how are you?
Doing good, Shad.
Doing good.
Great. Glad to hear it. Thank you, everybody out there listening, for joining us for this episode. We'll get our shout-outs right here at the beginning. The first one is going to go to Collar and Elbow, the wrestling brand, collarandelbowbrand.com. Use the promo code 4 Corners Podcast. That is the number 4, capital C in Corners, capital P in Podcast, no spaces, save 10% off your order. And then we're going to go to Matt for our other shout-out.
Yeah, our shout-out would be to Orlando Colon. Orlando Colon, I'm sure he's been to Texas. He once had to do a gimmick of a matador, which isn't technically like a Texas thing, but they fight bulls. It's more of a Spanish thing.
Yeah.
But he's Puerto Rican. I don't know. It's all very kind of racially prejudicial.
I think the true question is,
for you.
I think the true question we're trying to figure out is, he's probably been to Texas, but has he been in Texas on a Tuesday?
I don't know. Probably. Maybe.
I think we finally made our way into a segue there. So, this is a listener request that was sent to us. They asked if we would cover Tuesday in Texas. Brad, could you give us a...
This Tuesday in Texas.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. This Tuesday in Texas. So, Brad, could you give us a little background on this Tuesday in Texas?
So this is kind of a weird show because, this is like 6 days after Survivor Series? Something like that. Some absurdly close thing. And this is like, they were trying an experimental pay-per-view for like a Tuesday night, and I guess it failed miserably. I didn't get a chance. I wanted to look and see how much it cost. I'm guessing this was like $20 or less, because I couldn't imagine them charging a full $30, especially considering it was shorter than normal.
Mm-hmm.
So this is an experiment. So this follows up about a week after Survivor Series 91, which sees Undertaker beat Hogan for the title with the aid of Ric Flair.
Yeah, if you have not seen that match, that is Taker lifts Hogan. Flair makes his way out to ringside. Taker lifts Hogan for the tombstone, and Flair slides a chair in the ring. Taker tombstones Hogan on top of it for the 1, 2, 3. So that's where we get this return from. I guess they were like, well, we need a really good hook to try this out and see if it works.
Can I interject?
Yes, sir.
This occurred at the Freeman Coliseum in San Antonio, Texas, which I think I shared before. My wife is from San Antonio. I believe I've been to this Coliseum because it's next to the AT&T Center, which is where the Spurs play.
Okay.
And a few years ago, my wife actually took me to rodeo.
Okay.
Because there actually are rodeos that travel around, or at least there used to be. I think with the pandemic, it's been that hasn't happened, but they're probably coming back now. But they did rodeos that travel kind of all around, like the Southwest and a little bit into the South, I think. And we went, and she's like, "Oh my God, rodeo is so fun!" So we went, and it's like, it is kind of weird because you're seeing dudes like ride bulls and like lasso bulls and other animals,
and then run for their lives so they don't get crushed to death.
They have like rodeo clowns that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was one rodeo clown, Leon Coffey, who I guess he might have retired. He was like, he would go out there and he would make jokes, and I felt like he was making like inappropriate jokes the time that I went. But it's kind of weird. And then the rodeo like had like maybe like an intermission, and it came back, and it was a Keith Urban country music concert, just in the middle of the rodeo.
That is okay.
I mean, that's a big get. He's like a big star. And it was actually a pretty good show. And then afterwards, we went over to like the Freedman Coliseum because they had like a stock show. So we got to see all the different rodeo animals. I got to see a bull that had, I swear to God, probably like the entire length of my car. It was giant.
Oh, wow.
Fun. It was actually like.
See, I'm
animal rights people's probably hate these things, but.
Well, yeah. I've never been.
I feel like
one.
the cow's got a legitimate chance at revenge if it wants it bad enough.
I've never been. I might have been to one rodeo when I was real young, but I discovered. My mom grew up on a farm. I discovered that she was a barrel racer in her youth, and it's just like, well, gee, Mom, why didn't you ever tell me this? And she was like, yeah, I didn't think it was important. And I'm like, I don't know. Tell your kids cool stories. That might be fun, but yeah, I don't know. She's just like,
I don't think I could go because of the smell. That's the same reason I don't think I could go to monster trucks, is I don't need to be in an enclosed space with diesel fuel and exhaust. I don't need to be in an enclosed space with cow crap.
You want to know something? I'm gonna make it sound like my wife and I are rednecks. We're not. Like, I've been to the monster truck show too. We went to Monster Jam a few years ago.
Monster Jam.
Is Gravedigger there?
Yes, Gravedigger is the star of the show. Gravedigger is the big attraction. He only and I don't even feel like Gravedigger did a lot. He like went around the track a couple times. That was it.
I think they break
I want cars
easy.
being crushed. They do. Like, I think it was like a 2-hour show, and I feel at least like 2 to 3 of the cars like broke down.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to Bigfoot? Like, Bigfoot was like the thing for a minute, and then like Gravedigger came along and stole all of his thunder.
Do you remember that Bigfoot back in like the 80s had a very short-lived cartoon show?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
What?
It was
Bigfoot and the Muscle Machines, because they used to have them. They were toys for a while. They were like these battery controlled trucks, and they'd have like little switches on. So you have your Bigfoot, and if you pushed it forward, Bigfoot would go forward, and you could put little cars, and it would like go over your Hot Wheels and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, my kids love monster trucks, so they will play Monster Jam and that sort of stuff. And they've got the thing they've got now is the monster trucks come with these little recrushable cars. So they're either rubber, so when you drive your truck over, it'll just pop back up, or they're plastic, but they're all connected to a central piece, and then you fold it down, and then just you pop it's like pop it into the slots to put it back together, but then you run it over the top and flatten them out.
What was the dinosaur when it was having a lull in popularity, and they were doing like the super gimmicky things?
Oh, the robot dinosaur that.
Yeah, because I want to call it Truckosaurus.
It breathes fire.
Yes,
fire.
I want to call it Truckosaurus, but that's what the Simpsons called it when like they drove into the arena and it trashed their car. So yeah. I know it's not Truckosaurus. I think it's like, I don't even remember. I just remember the commercials as a kid.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
There was also a very crappy Bigfoot NES game as well.
That doesn't surprise me. It was probably made by LGN too.
I'm pretty sure it was.
I have Robosaurus is what it was called. I'm looking this up.
Robosaurus. Sunday. I
had a Bigfoot toy, which was kind of just like it was almost like the scale of the Hot Wheels toys. Mm-hmm. Which is slightly bigger because, it had the big wheels and everything. But
yeah,
I was a fan of Bigfoot. Looking it up, it says that Bigfoot was running shows with Monster Jam, but I guess that ended in 1998 due to a dispute over licensing of video footage and pictures. So I guess there was a licensing dispute.
Bigfoot is you remember where we had we covered the monster truck sumo match on top of Cobo Hall.
Yeah. Hmm.
The guy that was there on commentary was the man that made Bigfoot, which means that he still retained ownership rights. But it might be that Monster Jam has licensing or partial ownership or something of all of the others, like Gravedigger, Son of Gravedigger, El Toro. They've got some weird licensed ones. Like there's a Great Clips licensed monster truck. There was a Scooby-Doo licensed monster truck for a minute. I don't know why I retain all this, but there it sits in my skull.
I think my knowledge of monster trucks ended as soon as I was like 12 and I didn't see the commercials anymore.
That's fair.
They still sell toys. If you go in like Target or Walmart, you can find monster truck toys, Monster Jam theme.
Yep.
They're easy to find.
I've got a plethora of them.
I guess I just think of it as monster trucks. I know they rebranded at some point to Monster Jam, but like when I was a kid, it was just the monster trucks.
Monster Jam is the touring company, the big promotional company for it.
To bring it all back to wrestling, because this actually does have a wrestling connection.
You mean like when we watched Hogan commit involuntary manslaughter on a pay-per-view and not get indicted for it?
It's not just that. That
connection. No, wait, he paid for it though, because I forgot he got gang banged by two very large men.
Right.
One of them one of them in mummy wrapping.
Bigfoot actually has a wrestling connection. I guess Bigfoot still did some sort of monster truck type shows or truck shows. And they signed former professional wrestler Medusa Michelli to be like the driver.
Really?
I think I knew that.
She's like a monster truck driver. I did know that. I didn't know she had a Bigfoot connection.
That's fascinating. Just for one other thing before we actually dig in. I spent a portion of my professional life as a licensed Power Wheels technician. And somebody brought in a 1980s era Bigfoot Power Wheel. And let me tell you something. Those things are a son of a bitch.
Yeah, I had one when I was a kid, and I think you had to... This is back in, like... I bet I had one, like, 87 or 88. And, we're talking about 80s batteries. I think you had to charge that damn thing for, like, 2 days just to, like, drive it around for 10 minutes, and then it was dead.
Oh, my God. I'm looking this up. I wanted this. I begged my parents for this. This was probably in like the Sears catalog.
Yeah.
And I never got it.
No. The that era of Power Wheels, what they would do is you had to put both feet on the pedals for it to go forward. So if you dropped your feet off the pedals, then it would just stop, and there was no bottom to it. So if you were just like standing in it or putting your feet down or something, then it wouldn't go anywhere. They didn't label, or the one I was working on, all the labels had come off. They didn't label any of the wiring. So I'm laying on the tile floor of the shop with this thing up on a stand over top of me with a flashlight so that I can hold the diagram up next to it. And I had to follow every flipping line of this damn thing. It took me a week between doing everything else and working on this stupid thing to get it going. And I didn't even get a damn tip.
You should have been like, well, like your Power Wheel's either fixed or I defused the bomb. I haven't decided which yet.
The owner would come around periodically and go, "How are you doing?" I said, "I'm a Gravedigger fan now."
Speaking of Gravedigger, in the late 90s, there was an indie wrestler that wrestled around like Central Ohio that was like an Undertaker knockoff, and his name was the Gravedigger.
Oh wow! Kind of surprised he got away with that.
I mean, it was like a pissant indie that had like you know how every indie in like the late 90s had a doink of some sort. Well, they had a doink too.
Still do.
Yeah.
I think they still have a doink in that one.
Maybe so.
And it was like, it was like the most low rent of indies. Like most of their shows, like guys couldn't even go off the top rope because they'd put their head through the ceiling of whatever like crap hole they were working out of. Or like, because they had TV for a while, and like the the cable, like, you know, when cable access was still a thing.
Yep.
They'd put shows on there, and like half the time they'd be in like some bar with like 3 people watching or something. It was like sad.
I'm going to be conspicuously quiet right now.
So this is a weird show though, because we were looking at the results, and there's like a laundry list of dark matches to this show.
I have 9 dark matches.
And I'm kind of shocked because I couldn't tell, like, where did you guys fall on the, were they sweetening the crowd or were they not sweetening the crowd?
Go ahead, Matt.
I don't exactly know. All I know is of the 9 that they have listed, there's 3 of them that it's like I would actually want to see, and arguably would want to see more than any of the matches that actually wound up on the card. But
I was wondering if some of these ended up on Coliseum home videos. Was kind of what I was wondering.
I bet you probably at least 3 of them I could say probably did.
I'd say 4, because I could see the Nasty Boys and the Bushwhackers on some, like,
you're right,
yeah.
Probably.
Coliseum is like filler, like, you know, some wild tag brawls or like one of those like off like brand ones where you know you're gonna get some like really weird crap on it.
Mm-hmm.
I missed those.
Yeah.
Getting those at Blockbuster because you never knew what you were gonna get and like how they were gonna mix stuff together.
See, I'm looking at the dark matches, and the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, I'm just betting that those were like go out there and do the thing while people are still filtering into the building.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, like Conan Chris Walker was a local guy.
Okay.
So he might have just been doing a tryout, and like the Harris brothers were probably doing a tryout.
Yeah.
And this is Chris Chavis before he was Tatanka, so I think he was doing dark matches while they were like getting the gimmick stuff together.
Mm-hmm.
So Conan Chris Walker, he was a global guy, Global Wrestling Federation.
And he was a world class guy, and he was also like a USWA guy. He was part of like that Texas crew of guys.
He at this point in time he wouldn't have just been like local talent. They actually did sign him to a developmental deal for like a couple of years.
I wasn't sure if he was, because wasn't he in a Rumble one year?
Ooh, that's a great question. I don't know. I don't remember if he was. I know I saw him work probably like primetime wrestling a couple times in like squash matches maybe. You know, maybe like against like Brooklyn Brawler or somebody like that. But they never did much with him because I don't think I don't remember him being terribly good, but I don't think
he wasn't the drizzling shits either. He
wasn't the drizzling shits, but I think they kind of wanted him to be something, and like he wasn't gonna be that.
I think we either talked about this or I either listened to Dixon Span and Chris Zellner talk about this during one of their global things about how they picked Chris Walker over the Patriot. And they were a little befuddled because they said Chris Walker obviously had a better body, but like Patriot had so much more obvious upside. I think they were saying that Chris Walker was a bit of a better talker, but that they kind of thought that was a dumb pick because the Patriot obviously had so much more upside to him than Walker did.
Mm-hmm.
So according to the hive mind of Wikipedia, they earned $100,000 in ticket sales from the attendance of 8,000 for this, and they got a buy rate of 1.0. So that's 400,000 buys.
Now, Shad, be fair to Wikipedia. You know some jackass that has no life made sure to edit that page until every last ounce of usable information was gone.
Yeah, I know.
And made sure that any list of people that were managed by anyone was just gone because they don't do lists, even though
they don't do lists. They don't keep finishing moves on it, that sort of stuff. But then on the other hand, there are people who go through and just nitpick every detail that is not correct.
Well, my favorite Wikipedia thing with wrestling especially is when a guy had like a 30-year career that's summed up in 2 paragraphs, and then there's literally a novel about the 8 months they spent in the WWF that wasn't even eventful.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I think they did that to Kamala. I think that one's the one that pissed me off. Because I used to be in this... I used to have to change the Kamala one because he won the North American title in Mid-South once. Or no, it might have been the Southern title. But the idiots didn't understand that, like, just because Memphis was at the Mid-South Coliseum for most of their shows did not make Memphis and Mid-South the same promotion. So I had to keep changing, I think, his Southern Heavyweight title reign to, like, no, dumbasses, it happened in the Continental Wrestling Association, which was Memphis, not Mid-South Wrestling Association, which did not run in the Mid-South Coliseum because they did not run in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Also, by the way, there is a note that parts of the event were featured on WWF Super Tape 92 home video from Coliseum.
Okay, because some of these matches sounded vaguely like I'd seen them before.
There are some of them that do seem very Coliseum home video-ish.
Yeah. So why don't we run through those real quick? So what we have is of course I scrolled past them. So the Harris brothers beat Brian Costello and Brian Donahue. Sir Charles, who I believe is Charles Wright.
Yes.
Right, the Godfather, Papa Shango, blah, blah, blah. Kama.
Kama Mustafa.
And also the Soul Taker in his pre-WWF days. Mm-hmm. He defeated Dale Wolf, who was like a noted jobber. Chris Walker defeated Brian Lee. That's kind of an interesting one. Probably very bad, though, because Brian Lee was not good at this time frame. Chris Chavis defeated J.W. Storm. Greg Valentine defeated the Brooklyn Brawler. The Nasty Boys defeated the Bushwhackers. The Legion of Doom defeated the Rockers to retain the tag titles. Then the Legion of Doom turned right around and beat the Natural Disasters for the tag titles. I wish one of those two had been on the pay-per-view because that would have been good.
Yeah.
Then, Ric Flair defeated Roddy Piper. Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Matt.
Sorry to cut you off, Shad.
No, it's all right.
I would have loved to have seen either of those Legion of Doom matches and Flair versus Piper. Like both of those matches, I would have preferred over what we got outside of Savage or Roberts.
I didn't have a problem with much on this show.
I didn't have a problem with much of anything. Like nothing I felt was like bad.
I don't know why.
It was just odd.
My biggest issue was I do not know why Repo Man and Ted DiBiase versus Tito Santana and Virgil needed almost 12 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know either. That.
And I thought
the Nasty Boys. I'm sorry, Brett. Hang on a second. The Nasty Boy or the Legion of Doom versus the Natural Disasters. I would have loved to have seen. Like I am here for that, but no, it's not there.
And I liked Bret Hart versus Skinner, but like their choices for how they structured that match really confounded me.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair statement.
And I feel like I really hate the Skinner gimmick because I feel like Steve Keirn was better. That Steve Keirn would have given a better performance in that match. Instead of being hampered by having to wrestle to that stupid gimmick and having that stupid like shit on his mouth and like hit the dirty like khaki pants and stuff.
Yeah, it's well.
So let's kick this off then, since we're talking about. So our first match is Bret Hart versus Skinner versus the Intercontinental title for the Intercontinental title. Now the one thing I will say about this is, I thought this is like a smart pairing because when you look at like the type of guys that the World Wrestling Federation likes to hire, Steve Keirn's a really good match for Hart because he can take his offense really well and bump and sell for him pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a good pairing. I don't know what they were doing here because this match, I would say Steve Keirn was in control for almost 95% of the match. Like I think it's like a 13.5 minute match, and I bet Steve Keirn was in control for 11
It's
minutes.
almost 14 minutes, and I don't think it was quite that much, but Keirn was in control of a lot of it.
Yeah.
In my notes, I had that. This was it was a pretty basic match. Like I could almost call the beats to it as it went along. And Keirn or Skinner or whatever you want to call him, he actually was selling and feeding well enough that it kept it engaging. But then we got to what I thought would be the end sequence, and they just kind of kept going. And
and Hart got his big flurry, and he was doing all of his signature spots.
Yeah.
And then Keirn kind of went outside on him.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden Keirn takes back over, and I'm like, what?
Well, and the other thing I hate is I've seen more Skinner matches than I prefer to say. I'm just gonna admit, but I for one have never seen him beat anyone with that stupid reverse DDT, and they were acting like that's his finisher move. Because even Owen kicked out of that at WrestleMania 8.
Did he really?
I think he's beaten jobbers with it, but I don't think I've ever seen him beat like anyone above like Coco Ware with that move.
I can honestly say I don't think I ever saw Skinner outside of a jobber match. I never saw Skinner like win a match. Like he seemed like just a jobber to the stars.
I think in '92 he and Virgil like do the circuit like forever.
Wow.
Who did he wrestle when we watched? Did he wrestle Virgil when we watched Rampage?
Was that what year was that?
92. That was like right after Mania. That was like their first big show after Mania 8.
I thought you had said that, but I needed to double check the year.
I have this recollection of us bitching on a previous show that why would they give someone like Steve Keirn the Skinner gimmick, because it didn't fit his strengths.
It was Skinner versus Tatanka.
Okay, that makes sense.
I was I mean, if we've already talked about it, I forget, but what was the point of this? Like, why this gimmick?
I think he was just supposed to be gross. This is like the start of their like gross out gimmicks where they were doing like this and like Bastion Booger.
TL Hopper.
Yeah.
Oh, I actually have a soft spot for Bastion Booger, but I don't get it. He's supposed to be like, like a kind of like a crazy hillbilly, but like a Florida man kind of like, but just gross.
Florida Gator man.
Florida Gator man.
It's kind of a Crocodile Dundee gimmick with the numbers filed off in a different hemisphere.
Comes out like with just tobacco juice coming down his throat. He has a cup that he's
spitting.
Yeah,
and he's got dirty pants and stuff.
Jaw, and he's dirty. He looks gross. He's got a big thick beard. Looks like he probably smells. Bobby during this, I don't know if you were paying attention to the commentary. This was an overall okay show. There actually was some decent matches, but it was just kind of like a weird thrown together show. But this show was made better by the fact that we get my all-time favorite pairing, which is Monsoon and Heenan. But Bobby, at one point, I don't know if you caught it early in the match, he tells a story in kayfabe where how Skinner is actually homeless and basically is living in a sleeping bag in the swamp.
Yes,
nice.
Yes, I did get that.
It makes no sense.
It's supposed to be about how tough he is. He's like, he's in the swamp with a sleeping bag because he's so tough he doesn't care. I'm like, Bobby, you're trying, bless your heart, but no. This is not something I'm buying.
I thought this was a decent opener, though. I will say this about the pay-per-view before we get into it. For a WWF pay-per-view, there was nothing offensively bad. And usually anything up until about 93, you're going to get something offensively bad on a WWF show. And I thought this avoided that pitfall.
Yeah.
There were things I would call not good, but nothing, like, offended me. Like
There
I think what was that SummerSlam '89 where there was like some Greg Valentine match, and we were just like, yeah, we're not even gonna talk about that because that's what it deserves.
that was so weird because Greg Valentine's capable of stuff, but and I'm going off of shoddy memory here, but it seemed like he just didn't really have. No, it was a squash. It was just Greg Valentine went out and squashed somebody. And it's like, okay, why? But, there it is.
So what did you guys think of this match, like, overall?
I thought it was fine, but it just seemed more like a TV match versus
TV
kind
main
of like
event to me, yeah.
Yeah, than like a PPV match. I felt Bret was like oddly disconnected. It didn't seem like he was like he wasn't feeling it. So, I mean, there was a point like when he's doing his comeback where he just he was just like no-selling all the work that Skinner was doing to him.
Mm-hmm.
I think wasn't Skinner working on like his shoulder and also his leg, whatever, and then Bret does his comeback, he just ignores all that.
Yeah, 'cause remember he started going for the leg and Gorilla was getting pissed off at him because he's like, you hurt his shoulder, why are you going for the leg? And Heenan was like, well, I think he's just trying to
hit everything and see what sticks or something like that.
Or he's just trying to beat him up and
That's why I said like Bret didn't seem like he was feeling it, just because like when it was like the go home spot, he's just like, all right, and just starts no selling everything, which is not very good psychology for the excellence of execution there.
I feel like we shit on Bret a lot on this show. It's been mostly deserved, but I feel like other than I think we liked that Rampage match he had with was it Rick Martel?
Was that the one where he picked up and carried the Bulldog through the whole thing, or
no? That was
SummerSlam '92.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we even crapped on him for that one because he wouldn't work heel.
Oh, that's right.
And then and then I tore into him on Tim's live stream for being kind of a prima donna and a mark for himself.
He is a mark for himself. Our friend of the show, Justin Curtis, is going to be very, very cross that we are talking ill of Canada's number one son, Bret Hart. But
no, he's number 2 because Wayne Gretzky exists. But
that's true.
Still a national treasure.
Point.
I actually like Bret. I'm a Bret fan, but I do think that he is like a mark for himself, and I do think he was great in large portions of his career. I think '97, right before the screw job, he was like on fire. That was maybe like his best year creatively, and his in-ring work was fantastic. He's a great worker, but I do think he was like occasionally prone to this, where it's like if he wasn't feeling it, he would just kind of go through the motions.
My frustration with Bret is he's got a very narrow view of wrestling. He has like a lot of blind spots, and he's not he doesn't have the emotional maturity to just admit that he maybe doesn't understand Southern wrestling or have a good grasp of like Japanese wrestling and who are stars over there, and he kind of just sticks to his guns and sounds like he's ignorant a lot of times, especially if you read his like writings.
That's kind of interesting that they would say that, because I would actually say of kind of modern day people, if you could take the old school like WWF, WWE people, I guess let's just take it to that company, guys like from the 80s, 90s, and you were to put them, let's say you were to transplant them into like modern day product, especially like modern day Japan, I actually think Bret would actually do really well in modern day Japan.
He doesn't like getting hit, though. That's what Flair's beef with him was.
Well, I mean, you adapt or you get out of the business. I mean, you have to. To talk about the '92 SummerSlam match, like I did say like that in watching that match many years later, like I didn't like it as much. I wouldn't rate it as high, but I actually don't think that's Bret's fault. Again, that's. Like, once you know the backstory about how badly Davey was using drugs at the time, that match becomes like way different.
Yeah.
I mean, it also is subtle. If you're not like a experienced wrestling fan, which when I originally watched it, I was like a kid, so I wasn't. But if you watch it like now, like as an adult, as an experienced fan, Like, you can see how Bret was leading him.
And you can see
and he was pissed.
You can really see if you're looking for it. I think where it lost a lot of luster for me is when you really break it down critically, the cracks start to show, and you can see where it's just held together by duct tape and bubble gum and a little dental floss, which takes it down. But watching that show as a whole again as an adult, I actually thought I love that Warrior Savage match.
We talked about that. It was so much better than I remember it being.
Yeah, and I thought it was a lot better than that. But like I said, I do blame him for not going heel in that situation. Like, he really kind of was stubborn about that. But like, the quality of the match itself, I mean, he really was like wrestling just like a sack of meat.
Yeah. And I didn't know that when I watched it. But so I'm watching it and I'm thinking to myself, oh man, what is this? And then one of you filled me in. You're like, oh, this is what was up. And I'm like, oh, no wonder he's annoyed. But it still bothers me that someone who is having the reputation of being the kind of professional that Bret's supposed to be he's the foreigner facing off with the hometown guy, and he didn't want to work heel. It's like, come on, man. Now, I'll admit, this might even be heresy of someone who has worked in the ring. I was never a big Bret Hart guy, and it's not that I thought he was bad. It's just I didn't care for him. You know, he didn't really do much for me. And the problem is with you mentioned, you know, we've given him down the road quite a few times. We just keep bumping into occasions where he's just kind of not doing, you know, given what his reputation is supposed to be, he's just not. And that sours me a little bit, because if you're going to have the consummate professional reputation or something like that, it's like, well, why would there be so many? I don't like there being as many cases of something like this as there seems to be. Maybe I'm being unfair.
I also have a problem with him because he blames Goldberg for ending his career, which I admit it was an irresponsible shot. Goldberg shouldn't have done it, and it sucks that he got hurt like that. But where I get mad at him is he always neglects to mention that, yeah, Goldberg kicked me in the head and it concussed me, but oh yeah, I kind of did wrestle for like a couple of weeks after that, including some hardcore matches where I was getting hit in the head with stuff. So yeah, like, I'm kind of upset that he did that to me, but I also, you know, was irresponsible with my own health and paid the price for it too. You know, I get annoyed with him that he puts it all on Goldberg and, you know, excuses himself of not you know, doing that stuff.
There was something I stumbled across not long ago where, and you're going to have to forgive me if I don't remember it correctly. I should have saved it. Where it was like his tune kind of changed on it a little bit. And I don't remember what it was. So I'm not going to slow us down going and looking for it. But
there's also a cool clip of him. There's an MSG show when he did that brief comeback. You know, he did that match with Vince that was...
Oh, yeah.
That was nothing. But there's an MSG clip where... Oh, and I can't remember who he's in the ring with now. I think Dolph Ziggler might have went in there. But he was in, like, part of a 6-man in MSG, and he actually did, like, some spots. Like, he did like, the second rope elbow drop, and he might have done... Did he do he might have done like the kick, and he might have done another one of his signature spots. Maybe the Russian leg sweep? No, I bet he didn't do that.
No, I would bet, because
he did do the elbow drop though.
I remember at the time thinking, wow, I bet you he's going to go through this whole thing and not actually bump. And I think that's what happened in his match with Vince. I think he just beat the hell out of Vince for ever how long the match went.
Well, I think he had his first stroke by then, hadn't he?
I don't know.
When did he have... No, well... He's had 2, right? Or is it just the one?
Memory is failing me.
Yeah, I can only recall the one.
I can't remember when it was though. It was either a couple years before that or a couple years after. I want to say maybe it was 2010.
I'm checking. I know he did a stint in a stage production of Aladdin somewhere in there, but he had a stroke in 2002.
And I remember, he just has bad luck there. Remember at All In, he fell off the stage too.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think his stroke was in 2002.
Oh, okay, so that's a lot.
Yeah, but yeah, whenever he showed back up, I was just like, oh, he ain't bumping for nothing, and I don't think he did.
I don't think he can, honestly.
No. But that, so he wouldn't do the Russian leg sweep, but
at least with the elbow drop, you're just falling on your knees.
You've got more control of that, and there's no chance of taking a bad bump and hitting your head out of it.
Yeah.
That was part of what happened to me towards the end, is I started taking, without realizing what was going on, taking more and more bad bumps, and I finally it kept happening, and then I went to the doctor because it got bad enough that usually if I took a bad bump, like I wouldn't get a concussion out of it, but I'd get whiplash and make my neck hurt, and it's just like, well, that happens sometimes. And then I went to the doctor about it, and she's like, holy hell, what in the world? So, that's what put me out to pasture, or that was my sign for it. But I didn't get that if I wasn't bumping, and a back Russian leg sweep would do that for you. So, but
do we want to move on to match 2 of the night? Well, the highlight of the evening, I'd say.
Oh my gosh!
Well,
yeah, we hit the promos around it too.
There is probably another personal highlight for Matt later in the evening, but we'll get to that. So this is
I know who you're talking about.
This is Randy Savage versus Jake Roberts. So there had been some shenanigans leading up to this, because at SummerSlam 91, Savage and Miss Elizabeth got married, and then Taker did they put a snake in a present or something? I don't know.
Yes.
It was at the reception.
That was a cobra.
And then later there's the infamous traumatized scores of children. Jake had the snake bite him on, I think it was Superstars. We'll go with Superstars because that sounds right.
Something like that.
So this is like Randy Savage getting reinstated after getting retired by the Warrior at Mania 7 earlier this year. Now, the one thing you can tell, I want to say going into this, you can tell Savage is off the juice for this. Because what happened is he was legitimately taking a break to try and have kids, so he got off like the steroids and everything. So you can kind of tell here that he's much smaller and trying to cover it up.
It didn't really bother me. It honestly didn't even really register, because Savage's size, at least for me,
big.
Yeah. So it wasn't it wasn't anything that really threw me off in watching it. I didn't have like I said, I didn't even really notice.
His weird peacock feathers out of his cowboy hat were throwing me off at first.
That was weird.
So, but before we get to that, to touch back onto the whole Jake letting the snake gnaw on Savage's arm, I remember watching that like as a kid and being like, and this was like right after I started watching wrestling, like literally like weeks into watching it. And I was like stunned by that. I'm like, oh my God, like holy shit. I think Jake, I haven't listened to the episode, but I think Jake did talk about that incident on Joe Rogan when he was on Joe Rogan last.
Yeah, Savage was like that snake's been devenomed, right?
Yeah, I watched. I think I talked about it on one episode prior, but what the hell, it's fun, so I'll do it again. He got Jake backstage and he goes, "That snake's been fixed, right?" Yeah, and Jake's telling Rogan this. He's like, "Well, if you take the venom sacs out of a cobra like that, you have to inject silicone because they'll grow the venom sacs back." He's like, yeah, it's had the venom sacs removed, it's had the silicone put in, that sort of stuff. And he's like, I need for you to let it bite you, yeah, because there's lots of people that might be out to see something happen to the Macho Man, yeah. And he's like, wait, what? He's like, do it, or you can't do it out there. And so Jake's all pissed off, and he's like, Jake's phrasing stuck with me. He goes, you want me to do this cold, like, your adrenaline's not up backstage, that sort of stuff. He says, do it, because it's Savage, and everything Savage did was intense. And so Jake had the snake bite him. He goes, are you happy now? Like, yeah, we can do it now, yeah. And so when he gets out there, and when he got the snake out, he said, I just paintbrushed the hell out of that thing. So it was real. That's why it wouldn't let go, is because he pissed it off so bad when he slapped the hell out of it.
Didn't he say the damn thing didn't want to do it at first?
Yeah, he couldn't get it to bite at first, so he just smacked the living hell out of it.
Because the poor damn snake was probably like, what the hell? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
And all I know, it's just like, its handler is just smacking it. So yeah, eventually it did get pissed.
I think during his WCW run, didn't he try and like do the same thing and ended up biting him instead?
Yeah, I think so.
So this is now what I will say I liked about this match is if they did this match in current wrestling, I'm not going to single out the WWE because they would not be the sole guilty entity of this. They would have made this like a 35-minute epic and like ruined it, whereas this was like a 7-minute sprint that got the job done and made you want to see more.
Yeah. This match started hot, which I love. And they didn't have to do a whole lot for this match. Like, watching this match, they're not having to. I'm going to say this, and it's not going to be they don't have to work real hard.
No.
Like, they don't, or maybe I should phrase it, they don't have to work real long to get where they're going.
No, they didn't. Because they didn't even try to, like, settle into a match. They just kind of.
Well, and they shouldn't have, because this type of thing, it's like these men should be hating each other.
This is a grudge match.
It's a grudge. It's a brawl. I will say, to go back to what you said a second ago, I was thrown off because it's supposed to be like a grudge match, edging into almost a blood feud. By the end of the night, it would be becoming a blood feud. But
yeah,
you have Savage running out to attack Jake at the very beginning, and he has the most ridiculous costume on. It's like all like
I'm like, why is that peacock attacking Jake Roberts?
Yeah, he has fucking peacock feathers shooting out of his hat. It's like it's the most ridiculous costume. It's like, why is this dude who looked like he escaped from like a carnival in Brazil? Why is this Rio de Janeiro? Why is like
that one feather sticking up from the back of the hat?
Why is that Long John Silver worker attacking Jake Roberts right now?
So then he attacks him, but it's
no. I'm sorry, that's too high class. Why is that Rob Roy worker attacking?
That's probably closer.
It's good though. Like, they just attack. It's just a brawl.
Yeah.
And the match isn't long. It's like 6 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have wanted more. I would not have wanted 30 minutes.
No.
I would have wanted more, and I don't know that I would have had the finish that it did, but it didn't matter because everything that happened afterwards, it's like you even forgot that Savage technically actually won this match.
I think the angle afterwards was longer than
it was.
See, now I will say I do have one nit I want to pick with with the angle afterwards, and it's something I just hate about the WWF is that because it's WWF, even back into the 80s, no faces have any friends, so no one ran in to try and save Savage, not even jobbers.
Yeah. That's true. The Matt, I'm going to say that the winner does actually matter, because if Savage doesn't win, then Jake has just straight up won. And you've got to have, in terms of the dynamic, Jake's going to win the moral victory here, so Savage has to win something in this.
If I was booking
that's why I think that's why he's got the win.
I can see that, but I guess my mentality with this is that if you're going to continue the feud, which obviously they did, I would have maybe have Savage win with like a DQ, like Jake does something that is like, you know, blatantly illegal, and so Savage wins that way. But I mean, Savage technically wins like clean.
Yeah.
Here now, it's not like he decimates Roberts. It's more like he takes advantage of I forget exactly what the sequence was, but he basically like he gets the better of Jake for like a moment, and then he uses that opportunity to do the elbow off the top, and
he caught him.
Yeah, he caught him. So it wasn't like kind of like a modern day WWE thing where it's like, well, we're just gonna have the guy like beat the shit out of you for like 5 minutes and then he'll hit his finisher. So it's like, no, it was not really a fluke. It wasn't a fluke, but it was also like, okay, he got him. Like he took advantage of it, he capitalized, and he won the match.
Right.
But it wasn't done, obviously. Then you had all the post-match angle stuff, which was fantastic. Like if you could, I like to compare to modern day a lot, but I just like to think that way, just because if you were to take this in like the modern era, it wouldn't work in WWE just because of how they are now.
They would have screwed it up.
Oh, they would have screwed it up from the very beginning. But if let's say you were to do this like in AEW, like this, people would be talking about this all over like the internet, everywhere. Like this would be like feud of the year, like just the way they're working it.
The heat was nuclear off of this, and that, you know, Matt, I did the same thing watching it. I'm sitting here and I'm watching it, and I got my headphones on, and I think I muttered to myself, they couldn't do this today. They would screw it up. I could see. I'm sorry, let me finish my train of thought, and then I'll pass the ball back to you. I could see them sitting there, even if we kept it exactly the same right up until we got to the post-match, I could hear Michael Cole shouting Fed lines like, "What is that dastardly Jake doing? He's not going to." And you know, the WWE universe, like catchphrases everywhere, branding statements everywhere, which detract from the seriousness of the situation. And then I'm sure Jake would have had a snake time or something attached, you know, some kind of dumb phrase attached to it.
Don't give Michael Cole any ideas, because that would have been the precursor to boss time.
Well, I'm convinced that he gets that one yelled in his ear. Say boss time, damn it! It's good shit. Brad just threw down his microphone and left.
That wasn't me, actually.
No, but I thought it was funny to say. You know, we would have had that all over it, and like for a lot of this, Heenan and Monsoon, they don't talk for pieces of it, and they let what's in the ring talk for, you know, speak for itself. Whereas right now, it seems like they can't leave well enough alone and let the moment speak for itself.
Well, I liked when they talked about it afterwards, how Heenan actually went totally tweener, and he's like, I'm not saying this from a biased perspective, but like, you know, bad stuff's gonna happen to Jake Roberts.
Yeah, like Heenan kind of broke rank with what he normally did.
Yeah, because it was getting over what Jake was doing, but it also is like what Jake was doing was it's reprehensible by any standard. Like even 30 years later, it's like this was intense.
Yeah.
And Jake, I know like things kind of were, I guess, already starting to fall apart with him, but it's a shame because, in my opinion, I really do think like him at this level, this heel run, he was like he was.
This was top of his game.
Yeah, this was top of his game. Like he was just so good. Like this, if you transplanted him, this character, and say he didn't have these drug and then alcohol issues and all these conflicts that he had. If you were to take like this person, like Jake and everything, and transplant him
to modern day era, like he would be like the biggest star in the fucking country. Like people would hate him. He would be so good with his character work and his promos, and even his work rate was good. Like physically, I thought he looked great in this match. Like even like his physique, he looked like he was like working out. He looked imposing.
He didn't have that pot belly he can have sometimes in the late 80s and early 90s.
And Jake's a big dude. Like Jake's what, 6'6", I think.
Yeah, he's big.
Right, 6'5", 6'6". So
look it up real quick.
I mean, his dad's a big boy too.
He's billed at 6'6", so he's probably shoots 6'4" or so.
But
still, that's big.
Grizzly Smith's a big guy if you ever catch him on like Mid-South stuff.
But you're right, Matt. Like his character work here is just, oh my God, it's so like sitting here with the body of knowledge we have. We know that like he doesn't stay there real long because his demons catch up to him and that sort of stuff. But even watching it, it's still gripping in how they do everything, and you're just like, oh man, what in the and. Combine that with, in the climate of the time, nobody lays a hand on Elizabeth except Jake does.
Well, so to walk through it, like Savage wins, but then the fighting continues, and Jake manages to DDT Savage, and then he DDTs him again. So, and Savage's selling in this, I thought, was fantastic. Like he sells it like he's dead, like he's almost unconscious because he like basically can't even move. He's just so incapacitated.
We forgot a stipulation. Jack Tunney had ruled that there can be no reptile at ringside for this match.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, I have to say too, just thinking about it while Matt's getting into it, I have to say Jake's got some sacks on him for doing this in Texas when you don't know what kind of weaponry the audience might have on them and the fucks they might or might not give about jumping in the ring and taking care of you.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so Savage is basically incapacitated, and then Jake goes outside the ring, and from underneath the ring he pulls out like a small bag, and of course the implication is that he has the Cobra with him.
Yeah.
So then Elizabeth like runs from the back, and she's like pleading with Jake to not bring the snake out again. She's like draping herself over Savage.
I love that while she's doing this, she is also trying to move Savage out of the ring, but he's dead weight selling so much that she can't move him. Like that whole selling just came together so well.
Yeah. And you're right, like Savage apparently has no friends, so no one's coming out to stop this. Not even other jobbers. Eventually at the very, very end, they have like a second ref come in. That apparently is enough for Jake to beg off, but like Jake makes a big deal. Like he pulls like a long, I mean like from, it covers his entire hand and wrist up to like the elbow. So it's supposed to be like a leather glove. It's clearly like a glove that he's now going to use to handle this Cobra that he has in the bag.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth is like pleading with him, and Jake just starts like jawing with her, and they have the mic up close, and he's just like fucking sadistic, and it is so dark, like the shit that he's saying. Like he's like, you better start begging to Elizabeth. And eventually it comes to a point where he like grabs her and is like talking shit to her.
Yeah.
And he fucking grabs her by the hair with one hand and slaps her with the other. And she like, I thought he punched her, but it's more of a slap.
Yeah.
And she kind of just like falls down and like covers her face, and then she's like again crawling over to Randy and like protecting him. And the crowd is like insane with this, and at that point is when like the second ref comes in, and I think Jack Tunney was like,
Tunney shows up, yeah.
Tunney, you're fucking useless, Jack Tunney.
And you know what the sad part of all this was is they make him empty the bag out, and it was just a ham and cheese sandwich.
Yeah, there was never a snake in it.
Yeah, and he says that at some point, like the mic to catch that. It's like there was no snake in there, and he of course Jake played them all.
Yeah, he says, no, I played it straight. There never was a snake.
He's like, no, it was my drug dealer. It's just cocaine, guys.
He says that to Tunney on the way out. He says, no, I played it straight. There never was. So Tunney can't suspend him for breaking the rule and bringing a snake to ringside.
Well, I want to point out, this is all Tunney's fault technically, because at one point, earlier before all of this, Savage had a chair. He's going to go attack Jake with it. And Jack Tunney took that chair away. So all this bad shit that happened, Jack Tunney's fault.
Well, Jack Tunney gets his later, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jack Tunney was all over this event, and it was really kind of annoying.
There's 5 matches. He was involved in 2 of them, so.
Yeah.
Which is too many. Too many. But this was such a fucking hot angle, and it was so intense.
Oh,
and
God.
Now it's this match, which you thought this match would be the grudge match. It's no, they got to face each other again because you want to see blood. You want to see absolute violence.
Yeah.
And when they came back from the, I guess it's the break or whatever, Mean Gene. It was Mean Gene, right? Mean Gene was
who was it? Sean Mooney.
Oh, that's right. It was Sean Mooney. That's right.
Oh.
I was Sean Mooney interviewing. Well, Jake. Well, who interviewed Jake?
They did that before the match.
No, Jake had another segment.
Did he? And I'm forgetting it?
Yeah, Jake had another segment. I feel like it was with Mean Gene.
Maybe it was, and I'm forgetting.
Because you're sick, get out of here. Because Jake starts.
Yeah, that seems more like a Mean Gene.
It wasn't Sean Mooney. It was Mean Gene. Jake, they interviewed Jake, and he was basically so pleased with himself for what he did to Miss Elizabeth, and putting his hands on her. And it was just ridiculous. It was so dark.
Yeah.
But to go with since you brought up the promo, I forgot to talk about the promo that he had before the match, where he was basically, it was dark then too, because he the awful stuff he had done with the Cobra and Savage. He was he's basically saying you made me do that. You made me do it.
Yeah.
And then he keeps going on with his whole trust me. His whole trust me catchphrase. And this is it's the darkest his character ever was. And it was so good. And it's in today's modern times, which it's 30 years later and people are way more jaded. And it's still it gives you goosebumps where it's what the fuck was going on here? And how did they let this happen? Because this was incredibly avant-garde for the time. He put his hands on a woman, which you wouldn't even do that generally, but he put it on Miss Elizabeth, which
not in the WWF. I mean, if this is Memphis, that's just Monday night.
Well, even Florida, because I've mentioned before, there's a great segment out there.
Oh, when Kevin Sullivan just socks Luna Vachon.
It's Luna Vachon, she's not presented as Luna Vachon. She's presented as just a random person from the stand or whatever, but he cold cocked sir. And I remember when I watched that the first time I watched it, which was a few years back, but I was what the fuck what happened? Because it literally is so a brawl comes out and all of a sudden Sullivan's just okay, you're in my way, punch the woman.
And then you realize though later that it's Luna Vachon, and you're oh yeah, she probably told him to do it.
Probably
legit.
told him he didn't hit hard enough.
Because that's one of my favorite parts of when they do the hoe bag with Too Cold Scorpio. Mm. And they asked him about her for the hoe bag. He's you'd have to be crazy to call her a hoe. She'd rather beat a chick up or beat a guy up than you call her a hoe.
Matt, the thing, combine Jake's promos with Savage's promos, which were also so good. The promo Savage had after the match, where he has the breakdown, he's threatening Jake, and at the same time, the Macho Man collapses and he's sitting on the floor trying not to cry, saying, "What happened to Elizabeth is all my fault. This is all my fault."
It was incredible. It was such good character work. Both of them.
I think where it works really well too in the WWF at the time is like there was not an ounce of cartoon in any of this.
Oh.
Yeah. It was, the best way I can put it is it was the most realistic, over the top thing I can remember seeing.
It was it was like if you were reading like a bunch of Silver Age DC and someone just like plopped a copy of Spawn #1 like down in the middle of that, and all you knew was like Silver Age DC, like it would blow your mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's a just okay. I say realistic, over the top thing in that order because it's over the top. There is no way that you're gonna have a dude who has sicked a cobra on a guy in a workplace. Like, you're not, that guy's going to prison, right? Like, so this, but on the other hand, the reactions and the character work makes it feel real, and it reaches in and you pull out this mix of disgust and just a little bit of fear for Jake, because you're like, this guy is capable of doing that stuff, but he's also smart enough to not do the, and then you go to Savage's raw anger from the pre-match promo to the anger mixed with the complete mental breakdown he seems to be having at the same time. Like, whoever requested this, thank you, because I had not seen this sequence of stuff before, and I appreciate the hell out of it. Like, I didn't get to see enough Randy Savage growing up, and the older I get, the more and more I love him. Like,
yeah,
seriously, thank you out there for that. I appreciate it. This was just staggering.
I feel like I saw this pay-per-view before, but it probably well over a decade ago.
I had seen it probably in the late 90s when I was like renting every Coliseum video I could find. I remember seeing Survivor Series 91, and they were talking about this pay-per-view. So I think there was like 3 blockbusters within like drive. I could drive at this point. There was like a blockbuster that was further out away from my house that had like all these Coliseum videos that I had not seen, and I think they had a copy of this. But I think I've only seen it once.
This is so good.
It's so good.
And there's restraint. Again, I'm sorry, Matt, go ahead.
I'm sorry. All I was going to add was this. Even though I had seen it like years and years ago, like I didn't appreciate what I was seeing. So
I saw it during the Attitude Era.
It was great to see it.
So it loses if you watch this in the context of what was going on in the Attitude Era, because I probably watched this in like the summer of '98. Like, this probably lost. I think it had more bite now because I wasn't living through that, but like in that era, like that really took the bite out of it, because I made the joke about that's just a Monday in Memphis, but that was like, oh, they hit a woman, like, oh, was Austin around, because that seems to be like a weekly occurrence. So I mean, I think that really took a lot of the spice out of it, but in the context of now where things have kind of gotten a little more restrained and I'm not watching as much modern wrestling, it kind of added that back into it.
And we're in watching this, in the Attitude, because everything in the Attitude Era was like, oh, we'd be shocking and get people to watch, and titties and all that, and so
now, Shad, we have to use the proper terminology. They're called puppies.
Matt, or Brad, I want you to understand, I am agreeing with you while I'm slowly rolling my eyes and making a wanking motion at the same time. You are correct, puppies, but whereas it was always like, we're trying to throw stuff in your face and get people who are flipping channels to watch it, and that's as opposed to like intense character work and playing off the buildup of the relationship between Savage and Elizabeth and the enmity that Jake had, all this other stuff. It's like, and the restraint of the company to let the talent handle it. Because another reason that I will say this could not happen in modern WWE is because they would hand both of these guys a script of exactly what to say and produce this segment so much that, because Jake's doing this stuff and teasing it and that sort of thing, and he's doing it very well because he knows I'm going to take a little bit of an extra beat here. And now I'm going to show the glove as opposed to, but he keeps putting the bag down. Like, he keeps dropping the bag and coming back to it because he's teasing it the whole time. And if it was today, this whole thing would be like 5 minutes. And there wouldn't be any of this, you wouldn't have the build and that sort of stuff. And
they'd have Seth Rollins do it, and he would give her the superplex and the Falcon Arrow, and she'd still kick out at 2. So I don't know what to tell you.
Like, in thinking about this, at least to me, like, I'm sorry, I'm going to bring this around to one of my marked tendencies again, but the Orton Wyatt Bliss thing from Mania was not supposed to happen that way. It got changed day of because Vince and Pritchard couldn't keep their hands off of it and leave it alone. Can you imagine what they would have done to this? They would have wrecked it by meddling in everything. And I'm convinced that that's why you see a lot of people currently who everybody knows they've got so much promise, but they keep getting meddled with so much and micromanaged and then forgotten about. It's like they don't trust their talent.
I think the other thing too, though, is where it would get messed up currently is I think someone would step in about shareholders and stuff like that would also mess with it too.
Yeah, probably.
So do we want to hit the next match? And
this is it's a heck of a come down from this.
Yeah, the show's kind of not the show never hits this high point again. I would say the show never gets bad, but this is definitely like the high point.
Oh yeah, you're almost out of breath after that sequence.
Yeah. So then up next we get the British Bulldog and the Warlord, which I kind of want to know if they'd been feuding the whole year because they had a match at WrestleMania 7. And was Harvey Whiffleman managing him at 7, or is Harvey Whiffleman newer at this point?
I don't know.
That's a good question.
So I have to say my first. Oh, go ahead.
Wasn't he? I'm sorry to cut you off. Wasn't Harvey Whippleman with Sid early on?
I think.
Or is that maybe that came after that? Because actually, Sid would have been a little bit later. I have to say, like, I actually never cared for Harvey Whippleman. Like, I understand.
I liked him better in other areas as Downtown Bruno. He was better in that character.
He just seemed like useless here. Like, he never really, I felt, unlike other managers like Bobby or Jimmy Hart or other people, it didn't seem like he actually, or Jim Cornette, like, he didn't seem like he really did much.
Well, they always gave him such, like, terrible people to manage. Like, I mean, like, I don't know what you could do with Giant Gonzalez.
Mm-hmm.
Or they gave him, like, Bertha Faye, and what were some of his other ones? Kamala when he, like, turned face.
See, I actually, the Bertha Faye one is actually the one I would have to say, like, in my opinion, was the best use of him, because they actually had him, who, I mean, Downtown Harvey Whippleman, aka Downtown Bruno, is like, he's a smaller man, he's thin. And he had Bertha Faye, who was large, and like they had them be like have a romantic entanglement. And unfortunately, like it was all played for laughs because Bertha Faye was heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though she was probably like the best worker they had on the
Oh, she was very good. She was a pretty good worker. She had I haven't seen a lot of it, but she had a very successful career in All Japan Women.
Yeah, there's some really good brawls with her and Bull Nakano.
Mm-hmm. It's unfortunately she passed away very young.
Yeah, she did. And there's that weird. She had that weird WCW run in like 2000 and 2001 when they were flirting with the women's division.
Mm-hmm.
It's
sad because she's someone who, if you took her like the modern day era, she probably would have a pretty good career.
Yeah, because she had not in WWF because they were playing her for laughs, but like when she was doing like the painted up like monster ripper stuff, especially when she was a little younger, she had like an aura of like she really had that like monster aura about her.
Yeah, I should also clarify what I just said is that I acted like, if she was here, she'd have a good career. She had a good career. It's just what I mean is like if she were featured today in North American promotions, she probably would be presented quite well versus just like
there's no one that glorified
comedy act.
There's no one that really does her deal in any promotion now. I mean, they steal. I mean, I guess Awesome Kong was kind of that character, and I mean that did really well. And I'd say Awesome Kong was better than she was, but no one currently like that's like in their physical prime is like doing that in like a women's division. Because I mean, even in Japan, they're kind of just wheeling out Aja Kong still.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I will say for people, excuse me, goodness, for people who like modern day product, a woman who kind of does have this, like she's a bigger woman, and has kind of like a comedy thing going, but is still treated well and with respect, was Faye Jackson on the indie scene, who I think she's made noise about how she's essentially like retired or
really
isn't going to compete any further. I think she's made noise about it. I mean, I think she's relatively young. I don't know how old she is, but I don't think she's, I don't think she's like 40. So she can always come back, but I think she's taken a step away. But
I think a lot of people like her we're gonna see not come back once things start getting in full swing, because they probably got like they either focus more on their job or they just realized how little they were getting out for how much they were putting in.
Looking up her age, she's 34, so she actually has, if she wants to come back, like she would, I'm sure, have an opportunity to. And she's
someone 4 or 5 good years, I think, in her.
Yeah, and she's someone who I think has a unique look and a unique act, because she did the whole like voluptuous and like a sex symbol type of thing. But it was presented like tongue in cheek, but also very well done. Like she
had a good mind for her gimmick and like how to play. She had like when she was gonna do that. What was her show called?
The Grace Sweatpants Battle Royal.
Yeah, like she definitely knew like the market she wanted to hit, and she did a very good. She had a very good mind for like her gimmick and like. That sort of stuff.
That did happen actually this past like a few weeks back with the Game Changer Wrestling, the collective shows.
Okay.
Before WrestleMania, but I mean obviously like it was a lot of hype with it last year, but it had to be canceled because of the pandemic. But and it did happen this year, but it didn't have as much hype. But she's someone who I would like. She has somewhat of a connection to AEW in the sense that it's been weeks since she was there, but she was actually one of these like workers or wrestlers who was actually in the audience at Daly's place. They have like the wrestlers come and the wrestlers are the audience.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, because she some of her ringside reactions were hilarious.
Yeah, so it's like I actually think I would love to see her do like a run in AEW. It doesn't even have to be like long. Like you bring her in for like a year or two. Like she's entertaining. It's I mean, she's kind of probably more of a comedy actress because there's a lot of like comedy that's involved, but she's someone who I think is charismatic enough and has a unique enough gimmick that I actually think it would get over really well. I mean, it gets over in the indie scene very well. And the local DC promotion that unfortunately I don't even think is going to exist anymore because of the pandemic kind of shut everything down, and I don't think they've recovered. But the last show they did, the main event was her versus Effie. And Effie obviously is he's gay in real life, and his gimmick is very like that he's a gay man. But it's funny because they did it was such a meta type of gimmick or comedy match, but they had her basically start twerking on him. I think I talked about this on the show before. She starts twerking on him, and he starts like, it's where he has to suppress heterosexual urges towards her. And he's like trying to fight them off. And it's like, it's such a ridiculous spot, but in the context of that match, it was absolutely hilarious. And everyone in the live audience was like going crazy for it because it was such a smart spot. And it's like stuff like that. It's like she could clearly get over. Like she'd be really entertaining. And Effie actually he's been doing stuff with like, I think NWA, right? Or has.
No,
you haven't seen him.
I don't think I've seen him on the Power. He
was doing stuff a few months back.
Oh, when they were doing those mixed shows.
Yeah.
With Championship Wrestling from Hollywood.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they had a falling out with Dave Marquez at some point in there because he put Nick Aldis on blast on Twitter a couple weeks ago.
That's a shame because I actually think Effie is actually very entertaining.
Well, Dave Marquez did not. Effie didn't do anything, but Dave Marquez did, which I think is a big loss for them because Dave Marquez is like a super underrated, like great promoter of the modern era.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I wanted to say though, the first thought I had with this match though is, man, Davey looked juiced to the gills for this match.
Oh my God, he looked. Yeah. Like if you took a needle to him, he would pop.
Yeah, I was gonna say I like that's my thought. I'm like, I don't know if they want to do a bear hug spot or anything because the roids might start squirting out of his ears.
Yeah.
He was not toned. He was very kind of swollen.
Oh, he was like his back, like and his neck were just like. There was one shot of him where I think he was like kind of sort of flexing. I'm just like, Jesus Christ, dude! Like, what did you do to yourself?
Well, Warlord wasn't much better. Like Warlord, like if you want to actually compare Warlord to like a modern day Warlord was almost at like Braun Strowman level of like big. He was just big.
It's like Jesus, dudes. Were you in the bathroom like injecting each other before this match?
He could have been.
Cause like
I know Nash told the story is that they decided to screw with Warlord at some point, and they said something.
Oh, they would say like
Warlord's
you're looking
like,
a little flabby or something.
Yeah. It's like, hey man, you've been laying off a little bit, and he'd go and he'd start working out, and he went and like got a needle of juice, and he asked Shawn to shoot him up. So Michaels like hit him in the backside. And then he's two-handing it, trying to get the plunger to go down, and it won't go. And he takes down, hands it back to him, and says, "Sorry, brother, I think you're full."
God, could you imagine? Could you imagine being Shawn Michaels and you're like 190 pounds, and this very large man's like, I need you to put this in my ass. And it's like, but I don't want to, but you're very large, so like, let's just get this over with.
Yeah, it's a weird place to be.
Do you ever think like you're doing this and you're just like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? I could have been an accountant. An accountant, for God's sakes.
I'm sure D'Lo did.
Oh yeah, he was an accountant. Wow. He's D'Lo's been doing commentary on Impact. Just random aside.
I've always liked D'Lo. D'Lo and these are some weird picks, but D'Lo and Sanjay Dutt are two guys that come to mind that had this smoothness in how they worked that I really enjoyed. Like, there are a lot of guys that whenever they do stuff, there's very it's kind of hard to describe. But, if I go to shoot you off, plant my feet, and then pivot or something, they had this smooth quality to their work that appealed to me.
D'Lo's a big what if for me, because I feel like Matt might back me up on this, but I feel like it took him a solid 4 years in getting to All Japan and working Impact and stuff for him to really get his confidence back after the injury to Draws. Like, it felt like that just like
he completely fell apart.
Any semblance of like confidence from him for like years, and I feel like his career could have been so much more had that like because they both talked about it on that Brawl for All episode, I think.
I think they talked about it happening, but I don't know that they talked about how or what happened.
He said but they both talked about it, and you can tell even because this is probably 20 years later, you can tell D'Lo's still just torn to shreds.
Still feels awful about it.
I know he has to because it's his body, but you can tell Draws has come to peace with it more than D'Lo has. But they were talking about it, and he said he came down, and I don't even think they thought they messed it up too bad, but Draws said he just felt something go, and he's just well, I'll give it a second, and he's telling D'Lo man, I can't do anything.
Yeah. I've never watched it, and I never will.
I don't think it was on TV. I think it was a house show. I don't think it's ever been aired.
I'm sure somebody's got footage somewhere, and I don't want to see it.
It was 99. Probably not.
But that and I saw the Hayabusa clip once by accident. I didn't intend to, but I don't want to see that stuff. But they've never talked about what happened. Did Draws slip when D'Lo had him up and was going for the running powerbomb? Did someone's weight shift? They've never talked about it. They just say, Draws just says, I don't blame D'Lo for it. It's just something that happened.
I think sometimes what happens on some of those really bad ones is I think you misfire a bit, but you think you're good, and you both think you're good. Even the guy taking it's okay, we're good. And then you're just off too much, and then you don't realize it until you come down, and then they're just...
something happens on the way down, and at that point, you don't have... Your control for what you could do is gone because you're already in progress. What happened with Joe and Tyson Kidd. Kidd does not blame Joe for it. It's just a freak thing that happened. But, I'm sure Joe feels terrible about him, and we know D'Lo does. Well, but I always loved.
I know when Benoit dropped Sabu on his head, they couldn't find him, and they found him crying in a closet because he thought he killed Sabu. Which, considering how his life ended up, that's really tragic in its own way.
It is. It really...
But, because, I don't know... That one used to be on, all their DVDs, but, man, if you've ever seen the Sabu one, that one's fucking brutal.
It is brutal. I remember that one.
That was off of a back body drop, wasn't it?
No, it was a German, I think.
I thought it was off of a botched back body drop, but I could just be wrong. I don't want to know. I don't want to see it. But just to have that happen.
Or the Viano that Raven saved because he was on top of it.
I remember seeing that. Because Canyon Canyon immediately knew something was wrong. But what didn't Raven cradle his head and protect him or something like that after the landing?
Yeah, Raven didn't let go of him. Because even I was still newer to watching. Even then, I knew something was wrong because Raven was holding his head in place.
Well, Canyon's response told you everything, but
you could tell when it happened, and the way that they just ended the match too. But you could tell because Raven, I think, dropped too early.
I'm
when they
not
went
sure.
for it.
And I like I said, I don't want to see that stuff. It's bad enough. But
The buff one was the buff one. I don't remember that one.
that was Rick Steiner did a flying bulldog, and Buff's head came out of Rick's arm, basically right before Rick hit the mat.
Okay.
So, and then in the impact of it, Buff still had the forward momentum, and his head was up, and he ran into Rick's back, which dropped him. I remember watching that live.
But I will say all of those are preferable to was that UFC 262?
Oh God,
The
was that?
The Weidman busting his leg on.
Oh
The
God,
most recent one?
You can literally see his like foot like wrap around the guy because he broke
oh
his shin.
jeez.
Wait, the one
Yeah.
that just happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I was. I don't watch like UFC like live because I know I'm not. Even though I have an ESPN Plus subscription, I'm not going to pay like additional $60-$70 for
Yeah,
those
I
pay-per-views.
know, it's
But
ridiculous.
I've expressed before, like if you want to actually pay attention to what's going on in the pay-per-view, you're not like going to a bar watching with friends. Like
You get all the good
could-
stuff in like a
you could-
streamable or a GIF the
you
next day anyway.
you can just find out what's happening on Twitter. Like you can just go on Twitter,
Mhm.
click on like trending, and UFC will be trending because it's those are always like big events, and you can basically find out everything that's going on. You can see like GIFs that will show you all the highlights, like essentially contemporaneously. You can watch it as it's happening.
Yeah.
And I remember, I have like just like a rolling text exchange with some group of friends, like friend of the show, Christy Petrillo, and there's a couple other people on there, including friend of the show, Damian Gonzalez, Dames. But anyway, I just get a text in that thread where Chris is just like going like, oh my God. And I'm like, what? So I immediately was like, oh, it must be like the pay-per-view. So I go on Twitter and everyone is talking about that. And I saw a GIF of it and I was just like, oh, I think I immediately was like looking at my phone and I just start going, oh, and my wife's like, what? And I'm like, oh my God, you don't want to even know what I just saw.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't show it to my wife. But what's ironic about that pay-per-view and Weidman doing that is they actually pulled off long-term storytelling better than the WWE does and most wrestling does. Because so, for those that don't know, Anderson Silva was and the main event ties into this too. So Anderson Silva was like the middleweight champion for like I think 8 years. And just unbeatable. So he's fighting Weidman, and he's doing this. He used to do this stuff where he just like mock them and do this like, I'm gonna like act like I'm hurt and do this like fake out like head bob stuff. So he's doing that to Weidman, and Weidman just checks him on the chin, and he goes down like a sack of cement, and Weidman just jumps on him and just hits him a couple times, and that's the end of like this 8-year reign because Anderson Silva didn't respect him and like was fucking around. So then so they have a rematch a year later, and Anderson Silva does this exact same leg break on against Chris Weidman. So all these years later, Chris Weidman does the exact same leg break, and then on the same pay-per-view, Jorge Masvidal loses in the main event because he does the Anderson Silva like head bobbing crap and not respecting his opponent, and he gets checked and gets knocked the fuck out. Calling back to again Chris Weidman and Anderson Silva.
Yeah, I've seen some of those when I got started when I was doing Muay Thai training, and I saw some of those basically so that I could be aware. It's like, okay, this is something to be aware of. So I actually changed how I threw roundhouse kicks because of those.
Well, my wife was like, how does that happen? I thought your shin was like really strong. I'm like, no, like, but it's like there's a lack of follow through because of the way you connected, and when that bone goes, there's nothing holding anything together, so it's just like an empty boot.
Yeah. Like I said, it changed how I threw my roundhouses like that. It used to, well, it's not really important. But back to the match, right?
Yeah. So this
Oh
match
my
was
God,
actually
yeah.
surprisingly decent. I kind of liked it. There was a bit of a rough spot where Davey Boy goes for like a suicide dive and pretty much just connects with nothing.
Is that when he
Yeah,
goes into the ropes?
yeah.
Yeah, but that at least was like kind of a planned spot because what did Harvey Whippleman like
I think
get?
Warlord like kind of picked him up out of that and like did something. I think he threw him back in the ring.
Well, okay.
It was,
Oh no, I remember. Okay, now I'm thinking of a different spot, but yes, he does. He does like that. He does that like jump over the top, but Warlord basically catches him, which is a really impressive spot, and then he rams him into the post.
yeah.
This was a pretty good match. It was mostly just like a power match between,
Well,
really with Warlord doing most of the offense.
it was kind of like someone gave them constructive criticism on their Mania 7 match, and they altered it in a good way. Like, they touched on the same spots, like Warlord not being able to get the full Nelson, but they cut that down from being like 3 minutes of a full Nelson into like 90 seconds, and it worked a lot better.
I don't know. That full Nelson spot still seemed to go. Where's my notes? That full Nelson spot honestly felt like it just went too long, and the crowd wound down during it. Like you're watching it, and the crowd's engaged. Like after the spot's over, they kind of come back, but they lost some of their heat because that spot went too long.
And then they kind of do like the fluke roll up win, which I don't know why they needed to do that, because I think he beat him with the power slam at Mania, so I don't know why they did like a less clean
crucifix. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crucifix. Yeah.
And but I thought this was, for it being the Bulldog and the Warlord, I thought this was better than it had any sort of right being.
Mm-hmm.
It's better than I thought. Like, I'm watching this, and it's Warlord Bulldog, and I'm like, oh, well, here we go, Stiffsville.
Yeah, because
And
I
then
always
two
thought
stiffs having a match, not
them
stiffing each other. But
I always thought Warlord sucks, but we've seen him in two decent things in the last year, because he was decent in this, and he was decent on that UWF match with the Killer Bees.
Warlord is probably fine and suffers from his big bouts of visibility suffer from being contrasted to people a lot better than him.
And I think he was a little too gassed up in those big spots.
Yeah.
Too.
Makes him stiff.
Yeah.
But this was better than I thought it would be, and I'm like, oh, it's not bad.
Yeah, and I think that's when you know you kind of cheated the system on a pay-per-view like this, when like an obvious stinker turns out to be okay. You're like, okay, like, well, you know, how bad can the rest of this be if this turned out okay?
Honestly, this whole show was made worthwhile for me by the Jake Savage thing. But if I'd had my druthers, I probably would have replaced this with like Legion of Doom versus Natural Disasters.
See, I would have kept this because it was okay. I would have replaced our next match, which is Ted DiBiase and Repo Man versus Tito Santana and Virgil, because this match was okay.
Yeah.
Again, it was like a TV main event, but I was just like, why is this on a pay-per-view and why is this getting time?
Well, I'm gonna argue with you a little bit, because I actually thought this was a pretty damn good tag match.
It was.
Things kept moving. Everyone got engaged. Everybody got to do their, got to have moments to shine. I was like, this is pretty good. And DiBiase had his bumping shoes on. He bumped huge for Virgil.
He and Virgil actually work well together when they have matches, I think.
So, and Tito Santana did this great House of Fire, like right in the middle of it.
I thought they kind of made Virgil look like a dumbass at the end, though.
Yeah, I didn't exactly catch the finish the first time through. I was kind of like, what just happened here? But I thought this was a pretty damn good tag match. Like, everybody's involved, everybody's doing something. Sherry gets involved. Like, if this would be a match, I would be pretty proud to have in my catalog, because everything works, even if it's not like, shoot the moon great. Everything works pretty damn well.
I also like how coming out of this match, Ted DiBiase realized he needed to go legit, so he got the federal government to help him steal from people instead of like an independent contractor.
Repo man.
Because that's still my favorite is IRS taking Tataga's headdress because he took Razor Ramon's chains too.
Okay, so quick funny story. My sister-in-law was talking to one of her best friends. Turns out her best friend's dad, and I know this is a long way to go for it, her best friend's dad was like childhood and great friend into adulthood with Mike Rotunda, and told stories about how when the bus would come by when they were on tour and they'd all stop and eat at his parents' house. And she thought everybody was pretty great except for Haystacks Calhoun, because apparently he never changed his clothes.
Ew.
And he smelled awful. But yeah, that was she was like, she sent me a picture, I think. She's like, "Do you know who this wrestler is?" I was like, "Yeah. How much response do you want from this?" And she kind of prodded me. I'm like, "Yeah, Mike Rotunda, Varsity Club. Most people probably remember him as IRS. Tag with Ted DiBiase." And then she tells me that. I'm like, "That's really cool."
So, two stories I have just from you talking about this. So, with wrestlers not changing their clothes, Michael Cole told a story, I think on a Raw when Vader came back, that his first day on the job, Vince is like, "Well, before you can start, I need you to do this." And he pulled out Vader's mask, and he's like, "I need you to put this on." And, Vader's notorious for he never washed his mask. And Michael Cole's like, "Yeah, that was the first time I got ribbed in this industry." And the second one is, did you guys watch that squash match I sent you with like Mike Rotunda and like I think his name was Death Row, and the guy was like trying to shoot on him, so like Mike Rotunda just did it the hard way?
If I did, I don't remember it.
Like the guy wasn't cooperating, so like Rotunda just like went amateur wrestler on him and like tossed him on his back and then just like forced him. Like I think he key locked him actually.
I'll have to go back and look.
I'll look it up, but it's like a 2 or 3 second thing, and like the guy's not cooperating, so Rotunda just like does it whether the guy liked it or not.
It's kind of like the story about that guy that Mike Bell that tried to change things on Perry Saturn. It's like,
yeah.
There is never a way, if you're a job guy being put in with a name, there is never a way this is going to turn out well for you.
Or that the great Antonio that tried to do that to Inoki, so Inoki just kicked the shit out of him.
Oh my gosh, Inoki. Like, Antonio was apparently a little bit off to start with, but I think Inoki gave him brain damage.
Yeah. So this was fine. It was just kind of, I think, a bring down to get people ready for the main event.
Yeah, and it had good payoff. It had good feel-good moments, but you needed to keep, like, DiBiase was the one that needed to come out of this, I guess, in the best shape, because they were going to be moving him into a new team.
Yeah. So then, so up next we have our main event, which is the brand new WWF champion Undertaker defending against Hulk Hogan. This is a rematch from Survivor Series where Taker, with the help of Ric Flair, because Ric Flair like put a chair in there so he could tombstone Hogan onto it and won the title. So this is a rematch. And Jack Tunney is out here to make sure there's no shenanigans, which I'm sure Matt's just delighted to see again.
Said it before. A lot of people want to put Donald Trump as the worst president of all time. You know what? I'm not gonna comment on that other than to say I actually think it's Jack Tunney. Jack Tunney was the worst president.
How hard did you laugh when Ric Flair got knocked on top of him?
Oh, I thought it was hilarious, but I also thought it was like, I mean, it was kind of like a bad bump. Like, I mean, obviously, like, the plan was for a bump, but it was kind of awkward looking. But I mean, Flair, being the consummate professional, like, was doing what he could to make it look good. But
Flair was just being a nice guy and helping him up just in time to see the end of the match.
See Hogan cheating, being a dirty cheater.
Yeah.
Hogan did cheat like a motherfucker in this.
Yeah, and I mean, there is something extra sociopathic about using the ashes of the dead parents of your opponent who, in later lore, murdered said parents to win your title back from them.
This was like really like bizarre because Hogan not only dumps the ashes, he takes them and like throws them in Taker's face.
Yeah.
Which I mean, has anywhere else were the actual ashes used?
No, I don't think so. Because remember, if we know anything from SummerSlam 95, there was just a light in there.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say. I know that there was one where there was just they opened it and there was like a spotlight in it.
Yeah. Because they were talking about, on something, I don't remember what it was now, they were talking about how the ultimate MacGuffin of like the 90s is what was in the urn, but I was always like, but that's not true, because, and I'd seen this show, and I think this show wasn't well viewed at the time, but I'm like, that's kind of not true, because I remember at some point Hogan throwing the ashes of Taker's dead parents in his face to win his title back.
Have they established that that's who it was?
Oh, I mean, who else's ashes are going to be in there? Some hobo he just happened to murder a couple
of
days ago?
I have no idea.
Oh, wait, no, he had a mortuary, so I don't know. Maybe it was any schlub that, he decided to off.
There, I was going to make a reference, but you know what? I'm just going to let that one go by.
We'll just put down solicitors.
People who knock on your door and ask if you're aware that your car's warranty is expired.
Maybe Taker in his past life was a bootlegger, so they're just ashes of random revenuers he's killing as revenge in his zombie state.
Maybe.
Did IRS ever steal the urn?
I don't know.
That feels like something that did happen.
Or did Kama steal it?
Well, Kama definitely stole it. Kama stole it and then melted it into like this bizarre gold chain that he was then wearing.
Yeah, I remember that. Man, that urn's had a storied and turbulent history.
It has, hasn't it? There's been a lot that's happened around that thing.
So this is a lot
hold
of...
on.
Okay.
Let me pause. The 1995, there was a late 1994 feud with The Undertaker and IRS, which culminated in a 1995 Rumble match in which Undertaker defeated IRS. But so afterwards, Ted DiBiase sends in druids to attack The Undertaker. King Kong Bundy attacked The Undertaker. This is when I think DiBiase was doing that whole like corporation.
Is this when he does like the whole ascending to the heavens thing? Because
no,
like,
I feel like
that was at a Rumble.
That was at a Rumble.
Yoko, wasn't it?
That was not at this Rumble.
Because they even had like I remember that because even like Tenryu of all people like just came out and attacked him.
Yes.
And I think he didn't even Great Kabuki come out?
It was like every heel on the roster at the time.
Was it Tenryu and Omori? Takeo Omori?
Maybe. There were like 20 guys legit that beat him up before they did.
Oh no, it was Jeff Jarrett. It was like a whole bunch of people.
Quang.
Yeah.
Jeez.
What does 500 pounds of shit hitting a fan sound like? I think that's what WrestleCrap used to say about the Quang thing when they still had like all those on the website. I wasted so many college days on WrestleCrap reading those entries.
Yeah, you ain't the only one.
But during that whole brawl after their match in '95 Rumble, IRS was able to repossess the Undertaker's urn, which at the time it was said that the urn possessed the power of the Undertaker. Like they were so stupid back in that time.
What did he? Now he had an orbital injury when he had like the Phantom of the Opera mask, right?
Yeah, that mask, that was Mabel did that to him, I think, and they didn't want to take him off the road, so they made the mask to protect his orbital bone, which is why it was so thick. But they had the concept of the Mankind mask that they didn't end up using because it wouldn't provide enough protection.
That was always weird to me, but I didn't know he had an orbital injury till years later.
Yeah.
So this was, I would say, in my opinion, this was the worst match of the show.
It was this match.
It wasn't.
You know what, Matt? You go ahead.
But it wasn't great.
I didn't care for the Bret Skinner match, even though I thought it was fine. I didn't think it was bad. It was just like a TV match to me. But I would say this is the next worst match. But I thought this was fine. It started off pretty good with some good fire. But then they went into like this long like Undertaker choking Hogan segment.
I think they ran headlong into Taker's limitations.
Yeah, but he was pretty still young as a worker. I mean, he'd been around for a few years, but he was still. But also the gimmick limited him. Like he didn't do obviously like the classic stuff that he was doing, 10 years later, 15 years later.
And Hogan was a little older here, and I don't think it's the WWF, so like I don't think Hogan was going to be up for like some of the hyper athletic stuff he could do that would like.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I thought Hogan actually. I'm surprised Hogan did not gobble him up and spit him out. Like Hogan actually did quite a bit to protect him here.
Yeah.
Like, I was kind of surprised by that, but I think Hogan was essentially heading down a little bit, but. Yeah, he did more to protect him than I thought he would have, because Hogan usually doesn't in these programs.
This match, the way that when I got done with it, I kind of sat back and I was like, well, this was early Taker versus Hulk Hogan. It played out exactly like I expected it to. Like, the crowd's hot for it and everything, but there's nothing in this that surprised me. Everything... It felt almost paint by the numbers for how these guys were working at the time. And there wasn't anything that really reeled me in. So, it's not bad, but I'm just like, eh.
And I think if we're being honest here, I don't think Taker really found his groove as a worker for another 3 or 4 years after this.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, in fairness to him, though, I mean, a lot of his stuff were freak fights too.
Yeah.
He wasn't facing like good quality stuff. So anyway, Matt's favorite WWF president of all time, Jack Tunney, later vacates the title, and that leads us to the 92 Rumble, which is the greatest Rumble of all time, still is, and Flair winning the title, and Hogan doesn't touch the belt again until 93.
Which, given the mentality of the time, kind of remarkable.
Well, he was kind of gone for a lot of 92. Like, I think he just disappears after Mania 8, and I think Warrior was like supposed to take his place after that, and then they go into that stupid like Papa Shango shit where like he's puking and they showed it over and over again on TV.
They even didn't.
Don't make me regret drafting Papa Shango into my company.
They even did an angle. I think this is right when the steroid trial was happening, like in the early 90s. But they even did a whole angle before WrestleMania 8, where it was billed as potentially Hogan's last match. And I think I even sent this to you. Like, this is where like Hogan did this interview with Vince McMahon.
Oh, thank you for Hulk Hogan.
And Vince McMahon's like, thank you for the memories. Thank you for the inspiration. Thank you for Hulkamania.
It's like, I curse you.
It's so fucking cringe, but it's hilarious.
They're trying so hard.
It's trying so hard to be dramatic. Like the Laps fan has talked about that interview, and Vince McMahon's like over the top thing, and it's become like a thank you for Hulkamania. It's become like this running joke, but yeah, he basically.
I also think this show's interesting.
Until like WrestleMania 9 or close to it.
I think this show's interesting too because this is where you're starting to see like, well, I mean, you can tell the product's struggling at this point, but you can really see like that 80s WWF is like starting to quickly go away, or you can tell it's really like hitting its limit, and you're seeing like that 90s WWF start to kind of come in, because even like the Jake and Macho thing, I don't think you would have ever seen that in the 80s WWF. Like, I think that was a very 90s thing, and you're kind of seeing that. Honestly, I bet, was the steroids trial going on at this point?
It was starting to heat up, yeah.
I'm wondering if this, I kind of want to know now. This kind of feels like Jerry Jarrett had his hands in it. This didn't feel like something Vince would have done. This feels like something like, I bet like Pat Patterson and like Jerry Jarrett might have thought up on the side, because it felt very out of character for Vince at the time.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because it felt much more like an angle you'd see in WCW or like Memphis. So overall, I like this show quite a bit. I'd give this an easy thumbs up. It's an hour and a half. It's an easy watch. It's 5 matches. Nothing outstays its welcome. Nothing's actually bad. I'd say everything is watchable and worth your time.
I too would give it a thumbs up. It feels more almost like a Saturday night main event type of show.
It does.
But that doesn't make it bad. It's I would say, again, I felt like the worst match on the show was the first one with Bret, Hart, and Skinner, which that's not a bad match. It's just like their match. It's kind of just like a basic.
It's like a 2.5 star match, I'd say.
Yeah, I would say it's like that. It's just kind of like a TV level.
It's something. It's a match that nowadays.
That's like the worst one. The rest.
I'd say Bret Skinner's something like back in the day. If you got that on TV, you would have been elated because that would have really stood out and been good. But in these days, you would be like, that was whatever. But like back in the day, that would have, like, if you would have gotten that for free on TV, you would have been like, oh, like you don't see stuff that good very often.
Yeah, it wasn't a squash match, and it was pretty decent. It was perfectly fine. So that's the worst one in my opinion. Like the rest, were up to 5-star classics. I would say that the Savage Roberts angle, everything in total, is like worth going out of your way to see.
Yeah.
But the other 3 matches are generally good. They're not like classics, but they are. I'd probably rate them around like 3 stars. Like they're very inoffensive. I think it's a 90-minute show. It's an easy watch.
Yeah, it's perfect. Like you said, the Jake Savage gives is the reason for it. That sells the whole thing by itself. Hogan Taker is like an afterthought to that. Like that's the real thing. Although that's not what most people seem to know it for. All right, fine.
Well, I mean, because I don't think Savage and Jake really had a match after this, other than maybe like a Saturday night's main event. But like the Hogan Taker thing leads to like the best Royal Rumble of all time. So I think like when you talk about the context of history, Hogan Taker had a bigger impact.
Okay, well, fair enough. A bigger, longer term thing, but in terms of just angle, that was just heat. That was so much.
In terms of like a singular show in context of when it happened, it was a bigger.
Oh man, it was just amazing. All right, well, that has been this Tuesday in Texas. Like we said, that was a listener request. So if you have a request, let us know. Drop us a line through any of our social media. We'd love to hear from you. Any parting thoughts we want to give, guys?
I appreciate this one. This has been one of my more favorite shows we've done, actually.
Yeah, this is a pretty fun watch.
And we're gonna have to do the '92 Rumble later this summer because we've done like everything around it now.
Yeah, everything attached to it without doing it itself. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, any idea what we got coming up, or we still hashing out on what it'll be?
Well, I think we're gonna do cartoons, probably some lighter stuff the next 2 weeks because I am moving at the end of the month, so we're probably gonna have to double record. Mm-hmm. So probably non-timely stuff. And I kind of want to do, just because we did it last June, I kind of want to hit some global stuff in June again. Just because I know Matt and I have been itching to revisit it.
Okay.
So that's kind of what's on my radar. And then there's a couple things that we still have in the bin that we haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah. So that's what you can look forward to. We want to say thank you, everybody out there who has joined us for this episode. We would love to hear from you on all of our social media platforms. If you have a request, send it in. This is Shad with Matt and Brad. We've been in 3 quarters. You're in the 4th, and we will catch you next time.